Mr. Goat, guess what Roger Federer said? He actually said that the grass courts, as they wear down, might start playing faster. That might make some of the people who commented below that I'm crazy for saying the courts could start playing faster feel a bit silly. But they probably wouldn't feel as silly as Matteo Berrettini did on this crucial breakpoint opportunity.
Tra palla del 3-0.
What a day, tennis fans. What a day. The Big Three took all the Wimbledon fans to beat down City, and it was a sight to behold. Today on the show, we'll look at the numbers to compare the statistics, which might surprise you. Many people have been said, Matt, I'm so worried about the Federer return. The return just doesn't look good enough. Well, don't be surprised when Federer posts the best returning numbers of the day between the Big Three beatdown matches, and he's playing the best server of the three opponents that the Big Three demolished today. How about that? Also, we'll look at some stuff that Roger Federer said about the way this court is playing. We'll also look at some more scientific information about the court speed, because some people out there are saying, Matt, it's not playing slower. You're just making apologies for Roger Federer. You're an excuse maker. You're making excuses ahead of the loss. So we'll take a look at the real scientific data to shut that down. We'll talk about the 2019 Wimbledon quarterfinal matches that will be coming very soon. And another thing, by the way, most of the stuff that we're going to talk about that Federer said today is all in Swiss German, because you always get the best information from Federer in Swiss German, so it's not as big of news to the rest of the world. We'll get Federer's response to the big data scandal that we heard about at the beginning of the Wimbledon fortnight. Welcome to Coffee Break Tennis. I am your host, Matt Bradshaw. Let's get right into it. That's not how I used to say it. Mr. Goat says that my slogan used to be let's get into it, not let's get right into it. Well, Mr. Goat, if you haven't noticed, I haven't said it in a long time. So forget me for... I don't like to go with one thing forever. I like to change it up, as many of you who are fans of the show know. So welcome to the show. We got a lot of great stuff here today. First off, let's just talk about... I was going to start today's show with a compilation of players talking about how slow the courts are. But I think nothing is better than just listening to Roger Federer talk about it himself. I had a theory at the beginning of the tournament that maybe Federer, like me, has been kind of getting over a cold. I'm still not feeling very great, but my voice doesn't sound as bad, and I've got a lot more energy today. But I had a feeling that Federer maybe had a cold. He sounded a little subdued, a little less excited. And now, today, I feel like I have my proof to tell you that it's really just Federer has been very disappointed by how slow the courts are this year at Wimbledon. And like I said, later in the show, we'll get to some science. In fact, we'll do that next. We've got some... No, we'll save it for later. We got to talk about the matches first. But we do have scientific data that we'll get to later. Statistical data on the court speed. But nothing's better than Federer's response on the interview as you're walking down the tunnel that you come onto the court. As you're leaving the court, walking through the tunnel, Federer does the interview, the pop-up interview right there. And I want you to listen to what Roger Federer says. He can't hide it. It was a good match today, but he still sounds a little disappointed because he knows, and he even says it. Take a listen to the clip.
I thought it was a great match, great tournament so far, like you said. It's just amazing how little aces we see. He only hit a few, and he's serving on average over almost 130 miles an hour.
So the scientific data we're going to look at later has a lot to do with what Roger Federer says first there. Number of aces is the greatest indicator we have of court speeds. And if you go year to year at one tournament, it isn't always great. This is all from the stuff we're going to look at later from the scientific data. Because when Isner and Anderson make runs to the semis in the final last year at Wimbledon, there's a lot more aces. So you could argue that, well, the aces are higher that year than this year because those guys didn't make it as far, and a lot of the big guys aren't there this year, and you got more smaller guys like Kukushkin, the Kushmeister, and Nishikori, who aren't going to hit as many aces even if the court is super fast. It doesn't matter then. They just won't hit as many aces as those big monsters can. But when you compare all tournaments across the whole world on total aces, now you've got something that's a better, I don't know what stats people would say, the scientific term for it, But you've got a better model to study now, because if you look at all tournaments, some tournaments, Isner and Anderson will go far, and others they won't. So you get a better real number to look at average aces. And as Federer said, it's amazing how few aces we are seeing here. That's Roger Federer in a very nice way, trying not to sound whiny, complaining about how slow the courts are. It's incredible. Berrettini is hitting serves 144 miles an hour, and he can't hit an ace. Now, part of that is Federer steps in super early, which means you cut off the angles that can be created by the serve, and he blocks it back. So that makes it a lot easier to not get aced. Federer is a hard guy to ace because of this. But Federer's point still stands. The whole tournament in general, a lot of guys not hitting as many aces. And when we look at the data later, you'll see that the ace numbers are way down. That's the biggest proof that these courts are very slow. But the next thing Federer says is all I needed to know why Federer has sounded a little less excited and energetic in pressers. I thought he was getting over a cold. I think he's just been disappointed, especially when his first matches, he won fairly easily, but it's not what he wanted. It's not what he expected. And that's why he sounded kind of disappointed every time he's talked to media, I think, so far at Wimbledon.
Look, I'll take it against the big servers. It's just going to be interesting to see against a stronger baseliner how it's going to be then, with not getting so many aces from me as well. So just still, I guess, getting used to the conditions to some extent. But, great performance today. I thought it was a really good match for me.
So do you hear what Federer says there? That's all that matters here. Roger knows when he goes up against Nadal or Djokovic here, it's going to be even harder. It's almost going to be like having to play them on clay. He said it's going to be interesting. He's not going to have as many free points, aces. He's talked about it elsewhere in Swiss German to the Swiss media there, that when you go out for the corners out wide trying to hit those aces, there's just not as much speed to work with there, and it becomes a lot harder, especially against a great returner like Nadal or Djokovic. Let's talk about the matches a little bit, though. First, let's look at some stats. Put these on the screen, baby. Rafa Nadal, 47% on return. That is an incredible number to win on return, especially at Wimbledon. That looks more like a French Open number. More evidence that the grass is playing like clay. Now, Sousapalooza. That dude was toast. As Chris Fowler said, he was DOA as soon as he showed up to this match today, going through that brutal long five-setter, and you better believe that was a factor with Berrettini too. That definitely hurt him as well, but even more so for Sousa, because Berrettini, you got the big giant serve. You can still be in this match if you're a little tired in the legs. You play a match like that and you go up against Rafa, you're toast. So Rafa wins 47% on return. The second serve win numbers very good for Rafa. 69, 86 on first serve in 57. A little lower. It looked like Rafa was going for a lot on the serve. He really wanted to crunch this guy. It did so. Let's look at Djokovic, 46% on return. Now, that is a little bit less. Now, Ugo Umber, he's serving pretty well. He's got the lefty serve. He's using the slider a lot. Djokovic did a great job. And again, this is 1% less. 46 win on return at Wimbledon. That's an incredible number. That's a great number. Djokovic did a good job, as you should do with a lefty when you're returning on the ad side, of stepping in and moving to the left, moving diagonally up and to the left to cut that slider serve off with the two-hand backhand Joker style. And that was a thing of beauty to see today if you watched Djokovic in the Umber match. Serving numbers outrageous. Djokovic, 70% first serve in, 78 win on first. That's a pretty good number. Federer posted a much better number. Nadal posted a much better number. But how about this? The king of second serve win percentage today is Djokovic with 80% win on second serve. And Federer, all of you out there said you're worried about the Federer return. That match where people were saying that, I think Federer won 40%, which is good. 50% on return is outrageous. Against a big monster server, the best server on grass this year, Berrettini, 50% win on return against the guy with the biggest serve? That's nuts. Don't be too worried about Roger Federer on the return here. Don't forget what he did to Andy Roddick all the years here with the great serve. 69% first serves in for Roger, pretty high. Especially considering, when you're almost at 70% first serve in, you kind of sacrifice a little on the speed or the location or something. You're a little safer with your first serve. Federer winning 88 on first serve and 68 on second, which is an outrageously good number. Not as good as Nadal's 69 or Djokovic's 80, but again, against these guys, it was beatdown city. The averages mattered to me the most because how are these numbers going to look when they face each other? When Roger plays Rafa, will the second serve be anything close to 60%? That's what Roger really needs. I think he feels like maybe not because the court is so slow here and these guys are such great defensive players. I was worried about Berrettini, and you maybe saw at the end of the match why I would have been worried because, Berrettini holds serve at love, has a couple easy service games when he's loosened up and realized, hey, it's over. This might be the only time I play Federer on center court in my life, so, I might as well do the best I can and really go for some shots. You saw Berrettini hit a forehand winner and was like, everybody get up. I'm about to get destroyed. Get up. So you saw Berrettini show what he's capable of, and that's what I was worried we might see. Berrettini holding serve easily, just bombing aces, such a big server, even with the court slowed down. You're still going to see Raonic. I mean, you're still going to see, if you hit the corner, if you hit the line, you're going to hit an ace. So you will occasionally see some guys, even on a very slow court, pop in a lot of aces. Sometimes it's a little luck. You get a little lucky. You hit more spots than usual. We see Federer occasionally throw in tons of aces. Federer is disappointed here because he's not getting the easy aces. The aces where it's pretty close to the line. It's not a very fast serve, but it's an ace because it's grass, it's slippy and slidey and low and quick. Federer not enjoying how slow it is. But my point was you saw how Berrettini could have, so to speak, taken the racket out of Roger's hand. This is the dumbest illustration I've ever done on the show with a racket. This is here to show angles of swings usually. But you see, imagine if Berrettini was dialed in, comes out first set, doesn't give a what, doesn't care about nothing. I don't care if you love Roger Federer, which is not true at all because we keep hearing this. Years ago, David Goffin was a young boy or a young man, a teenager playing Federer, and we heard the commentators talk about how Goffin has posters of Federer on his wall in his bedroom back home at his parents' house where he just moved out of recently, and then Federer beats up on him. And now it's like every guy Federer plays, that first match, maybe the second match too, both of those guys were Federer's my idol. I think Lloyd Harris said that. The story about Lloyd Harris was his parents paid for him to travel all the way from South Africa and go to Wimbledon Center Court just to see his idol Roger Federer play, and now he's here playing him. Ah! That was the story there. Same thing with Berrettini, idolized Federer growing up. Now Federer is so freaking old that everyone he plays idolizes him, and then he ruins it for them. He spank. I think they idolize him, and if it was me, if I had a chance to play Wimbledon against Federer, I would love getting beat down by Roger Federer. As long as I had a couple good shots here and there so you could see, hey, I'm pretty good too, but he's Roger Federer. He's the best. I don't blame those guys for feeling that way, but it is kind of interesting. Brad Gilbert always points it out. The guys who say, I idolize Roger Federer, they tend not to do too well against Roger Federer when it actually happens. So let's pretend Berrettini comes out and said, I hate Federer. Who said that? Oh, the BS Russian, Medvedev. Medvedev recently said that he always rooted against Federer all the time because the guy wins everything and he got sick of it, something like that. Well, let's say Berrettini came in with that attitude and was just a stone-cold killer and was knocking down aces left and right and was holding serve easy, and all of a sudden we're going to a tiebreak. And then you see that big forehand Berrettini has, and let's say Federer misses a couple spots on his serve, a couple forehand rippers go by him. We did see Federer early on in the match get passed by a couple big forehands going to the net. Let's say a bunch of that stuff happened and it got really tricky. That could have been a scary match, and that's what I was worried about. But we didn't see that. We saw Berrettini get overwhelmed by the situation, playing his idol, Roger Federer, playing on center court Wimbledon had to be his first time playing there. So that kind of overwhelmed him, and we saw very low. I wrote this down. I don't know what the final number was, but halfway into the second set, Berrettini was only getting 41% first serves in. I think later it got into the 30s. That ain't going to work. On top of that, he was only winning like 68% when the first serve did go in. So totally mismanaging that. Another thing is Federer was constantly applying pressure in ways that I don't know if Nadal and Djokovic would have been as effective, because we don't see Nadal and Djokovic use that probing short slicer like Roger Federer. No one does that. Dirty Dan. Maybe he's the only guy who can do stuff like that. So I'm kind of curious. How would Nadal and Djokovic have done against Berrettini today? They'd probably beat him. But would Berrettini have been so nervous playing one of them on center court as he would have playing his idol? I don't know about that. Anyways, Federer constantly applied pressure, hit so many balls to the backhand of Berrettini. Now, we would have seen Rafa and Djokovic do that for sure. But again, getting so many serves back when the first serve did go in. This guy still has one of the best serves around. He's a top 20 player. He's won the most on grass this year, which might change soon. Well, actually, I think even if Federer wins Wimbledon, they'd only be tied, right? Anyways, whatever. Berrettini's won the most on grass, and nobody that Berrettini has played on grass yet has used that probing return that Roger Federer does, the slice backhand block. Constantly we saw Berrettini, who's not the greatest mover because he's 6'5", big guys. That he looks decent to me for that size, but still, any big guys, if you can hit the right shots, you can expose them for not being great movers. Roger Federer did a great job at that today, constantly beating down the backhand, and you saw the clip I played earlier. That was incredible. Berrettini tried so hard to get away from his own backhand with that block return. You don't expect to see that. Federer does that. I think that was a big part of what we saw today. So let's not say Federer got lucky and Berrettini went out there and choked. Maybe in some ways he did, but Federer did so many things and did them so well that he really earned a great win and stunned the world yet again, as the Swiss Maestro always does. With the Djokovic match, I wanted to say, I mean, it was pretty beat-down city as well. I told you Sousa Palooza, Chris Fowler said it best, DOA on arrival. Humbert, I saw a competitive first set with him. And when Djokovic serves for the first set, I was thinking, is this going to be one of those games where we see Djokovic a little shaky and not good when he serves for the set? We've seen it throughout the tournament. It's not a major problem. Djokovic looks very good, but it's enough for you. Because remember, we're analyzing down the stretch. We're thinking, who's going to win? Djokovic versus Nadal. Djokovic versus Federer. Federer versus Nadal. We're thinking of stuff like that here. And why wouldn't we? It's the freaking big three. There's no reason to bet against them. And when you see little things like that, you think, okay, maybe Rafa would be able to jump all over Djokovic. And Djokovic looked very good serving it out. I think he missed the first serve on the first point, but other than that, he knocked down some serves. Then, the first service game of the second set, that was probably the weakest that I can recall. I didn't see as much of the third set. I watched the first and second set, didn't see the entire third set, saw a lot of it. It was probably the weakest serve game I can think of from Djokovic. But Humbert misses a couple easy balls that he just rally balls, shots that he should have made. And Djokovic gets away with it, and then Djokovic jumps all over him, breaks his serve, and the rest of his history is pretty much beat down from the rest of there. And that's my wrap-up for the three matches today. Federer was probably the most impressive. Berrettini was the biggest dangerous opponent of the three matches. I don't want to take anything away from Rafa, who just looks really good here. But we haven't seen someone with the big weapon, the big serve, really play well. I mean, we saw it with Kyrgios, and that was a close match. Rafa was, I know Kyrgios played a good match, but I thought Kyrgios didn't play so well in those tiebreakers, and you have to wonder if it's a mental thing with Kyrgios. And Nadal was a little fortunate to get out of there. Sam Querrey is not going to come out like Matteo Berrettini. So I got a slight upset alert, and Brad Gilbert said it perfectly, about 39.7% chance. Crazy weird numbers that Brad Gilbert comes up with. About a 40% chance. Let's call it 40%, Brad. About a 40% chance that Sam Querrey can upset Rafa Nadal here. And the biggest thing is we're not going to see Querrey come out like Matteo Berrettini and be terrified because Sam Querrey's been here. He's done it. I mean, he beat Andy Murray on center court in, what was that, a quarterfinal? Only 2 years ago. Now, one thing I've worried about for Sam Querrey is he hasn't been playing a whole lot. He's been injured. Rafa might be able to just grind him down and crunch him. He might be a little tired by the time he gets to Rafa. But Sam Querrey's game isn't about that anyways. He's just got to knock down big serves and put Rafa in some very tight pressure moments, just like that Andy Murray match. That Murray match a couple years, I can't remember what the score was, but I want to say there were some tie breaks. It was a pretty crazy match. Put Rafa through that, and you got a chance about, roughly, as BJ says, 39-point-something%. Now let's finish looking at the draw, and then we'll do all that stuff I talked about earlier. We'll look at the scientific data, and then we'll talk about the stuff Roger Federer said in Swiss German. Okay, so breaking news. I'm kind of shocked by this. I thought Milos Raonic would come through, but Guido Pella has upset. More proof. These guys that love clay. Guido Pella was one of those guys we've been talking about all year who could be dangerous to a Rafa on clay because he's been great on clay in the early parts of the year where the other players are not playing on clay yet. They're still on hard courts. Lower-ranked players, they play extra clay if they like the clay. I mean, just look at this draw. Put it on the screen. Bautista Agut and Guido Pella. That's a Spaniard and an Argentine. Those are guys that like clay. Look at your fourth round. Sousa, Pella, Verdasco, Bautista Agut. Verdasco's not been good on grass at all this year, the little bit that he played. Benoit Paire won some tournaments on clay this year. Didn't win any on grass. Anyways, Bautista Agut and Guido Pella will play to take on the winner of David Goffin and Novak Djokovic. I give David Goffin an outside chance to beat Djokovic. If I had to put money down, of course I'm going to go with Djokovic. But Cousin Fed, David Goffin, the Gopher, he has been playing very well lately. He's played well on grass in the grass season, going to the final of Halle, where he lost to Roger Federer. And if Djokovic is a little off, maybe a little caught off guard, because Goffin is a guy who's playing near his very best. Hurkacz played very near his very best. If Djokovic is caught off a little guard like that, we could see Djokovic drop some sets here. If things get really tricky, maybe he loses, but I really doubt it. I think Djokovic comes through in 4 sets here. I think Goffin is good for 1. And Bautista Agut, Pelo's already had a couple 4-set matches in a brutally long match with Raonic now. That was a tiebreaker in the 4th, 8-6 in the 5th set. Are we ever going to see the 12-all? It's so funny that they make that rule, and we're not going to see it, are we? No, maybe with one of the big 3 matchups. Bautista Agut has quietly snuck in without dropping a set. He's the only... Remember, we said last show, this is like the first time ever the big 3 have all dropped a set in week 1. Bautista Agut has got to be the only... Maybe there's someone else in the draw I'm forgetting, but Bautista Agut's got to be the only player who hasn't dropped a set. And one of them, against Steve Darcis, the little Belgium, 4-2 retirement in the 3rd. Didn't even have to play a full 3rd set there. It's funny, someone said to me on Instagram today, commented on a ATP post. Sorry, I can't remember who it was. ATP post talking about Bautista Agut is through. He's one of the first people to get through today on Beatdown Monday. And somebody said, isn't Bautista Agut really the biggest threat to Djokovic? Because I've been saying, hey, it looks like Goffin is now the biggest threat to Djokovic. This has turned out to be a pretty easy draw for Djokovic, besides from Hurkacz. That was a tough opponent, just like Matteo Berrettini. I'd say Hurkacz, Berrettini, around the same level. Berrettini obviously has been very good on grass this year, but Hurkacz has been good enough throughout the year for us to know he's potential danger for a young player. Maybe Bautista Agut is the biggest threat in the top half of the draw to Novak Djokovic because he's already beat him this year. He's already in his head. I was fortunate enough to be in Miami with a pretty good seat to watch that match where Djokovic is winning, and then all of a sudden something happened, something flipped in his head, and Bautista Agut wins that match in Miami. Djokovic stunned. It was a weird result. Everyone was shocked by that. I think there was a rain delay, and when Djokovic comes back, everything's totally different. Part of that had to have been in his head because Bautista Agut is a great rally player, has pretty flat shots that get through the court very fast. Bautista Agut may be able to challenge Djokovic here. I want to say, didn't Bautista Agut just play Roger Federer at Halle? And it was a pretty tight match. It was probably the scariest match for Federer fans in the tournament. Did that happen? Am I imagining that? Either way, grass is going to be good for Bautista Agut because it stays lower. That's the one thing good for Roger Federer that he can be happy about this year. It's slower, but it is lower. And Bautista Agut's ball, his forehand, it stays so low and has some pretty good pace on it that's potential danger for Djokovic if he's not playing. If he's playing very well, he's going to win for sure. David Goffin will be a good test. Bautista Agut maybe even a better test. And Bautista Agut is going to have the most gas in the tank, especially if you can get through Agito Pella fast, because Pella's going to be worn out. It's going to be like Sousa all over again. Now we go to the bottom half, Sam Querrey and Rafa Nadal. This is probably the most dangerous of all the matchups before we get to big 3 matchups, Djokovic versus Federer or Nadal versus Federer. This is probably the trickiest one left. And Sam Querrey, maybe not playing a lot, maybe a little out of shape or something. I don't know. We'll see. The thing about Sam Querrey is a lot of his points are over pretty fast, even when the court is slowed. I mean, if you look at the stats, he hit 25 aces in his match. It's about as high as it gets on the slow grass this year. And he's getting 66% first serves and winning 83% on those, winning over, I think over 60% on second. So a lot of easy points there. Probably won't be too tired, and has the kind of game that we always see trouble Rafa. Now, if we look at the big stats leaderboard, take a look at this. Sam Querrey is our king. Eliminate the guys who aren't here anymore, like Karlovic. Sam Querrey's winning 86% on first serve. That's as good as it gets at Wimbledon right now. Raonic was right there, but he is out. Kevin Anderson, pretty close. He is out. Nadal, Cilic, Federer, Struffster. A lot of those guys are out, but Federer and Nadal, they're tied with 83% win on first serve. That's actually a really good sign for Rafa. Djokovic down a little at 81. David Goffin serving out of his mind at 82. Didn't he out-ace Federer in Halle? Or at least he was for some point of the match, for a stretch. Now we take a look at the second serve numbers. Federer is king there with 69%. He's been on top since the beginning of the tournament. Nadal pretty close with 67. Raonic was right there with 62. He is out. Nishikori 61. Djokovic just barely on this list at the very bottom at 58%. So those are numbers you got to think about when you have a close matchup like a Federer versus Nadal or Nadal versus Djokovic, Federer versus Djokovic, because it's going to come down to so little, and there's always going to be games where you miss some first serves, and then the second serve numbers are so important that you can rely on it. And a very good sign for Federer that he's on top. I mean, he's been the best second server of the year all year long. And he's won more matches than anyone this year. I just want to say something really quick before we move on about the Nadal serve. I've always been surprised. I know Nadal doesn't have the biggest serve, but he's got a great lefty slide serve. And on grass, a slide stays low and moves, kind of like a slice backhand, you know. A slice serve should always be rewarded, so I'm not too shocked to see. But also, Rafa appears to be going for more. I don't have any raw data in front of me to confirm that, but just from watching Rafa, it looks like he really wants to win Wimbledon this year, and he's going for a lot on his serve, playing very aggressive. All right, last part of the show today, we're going to go through some of the stuff Federer said in Swiss German because it's hard to find. I want to thank Ken, my good friend Ken Meisen, for translating this for me and sending this over. And now I get to be proved right. Sometimes sometimes grass courts do speed up. Question from the Swiss German media. Roger, you have won 3 sets in a row. You finished 3 matches. Could you give a summary of how the grass plays? There's a theory that it's intentionally, keyword there, intentionally, been slowed down. For those of you who are less cultured, not travelers of the world, citizens of the world, as Paul Anaconda likes to say, that means they did it on purpose. Federer says, no, I don't believe that. Raonic said something like this. Well, I'll have to talk to him. But I have talked to Tim Henman. I know him very well. And he said, look, they still do exactly the same thing, meaning all the preparation they do into this grass court. From that perspective, I do believe that's the case. I also believe it's like with Vine. I don't know what that means. Maybe a gardening thing there. Comment below if you're a gardener. Which is also not the same every season depending on the weather, you know. Therefore, and he laughed. So that must be a funny thing if you're a gardener. Therefore, this season, it may have been a bit softer, especially during the first week. That's surprising because they can pump air into it. So they actually are able to control it. But in spite of everything, when they remove the cover, it has somewhat of an effect on the surface. I've heard that this season, the slice, on average, bounces up 5 centimeters less than last year at Wimbledon. Good news for Federer. You saw it with Berrettini today, used perfectly, getting that ball real low, making that big man run up there and get down. I mean, that's slightly different, right? And I have the feeling, especially today, when playing on the court 1 and now on the center court, the court is getting harder, right? Because they've been exposed to the sun, and then they've been trampled upon. So I get the feeling it's getting harder, playing more like a hard court. Here comes the money line for those of you who say, Matt, you're crazy, grass courts get slower. It is getting easier to move around the baseline, the ball is bouncing up higher, and accordingly, it could get faster. That's what Roger Federer said. I always have the feeling that if you serve to the outer areas of the court, it still doesn't go super fast, but it's okay. So you see, Federer not thrilled with this, not being able to get the easy aces as easily as he expects them to come at Wimbledon. I've always said that the first 2 matches are the most difficult since Wimbledon grass is simply soft in beginning, right? I don't believe it's a huge difference, but it surely has had its pitfalls this season to get used to the grass court. We're running out of time, so I'm not going to get into the analytics stuff. But basically, Federer said, look, my coaches use it. It's a resource. We'd be crazy not to use it. A lot of people have been using it for a while. But my big belief, and he's basically addressing what I said. Hey, Roger, I was a little critical of Federer recently, believe it or not. I said, Roger, you said you're not big on the data analytics, but it turns out you had a non-disclosure agreement to pay a lot of money to have exclusive rights to a big data analytics firm. And Federer says, look, that's something my coaches worry about. Yeah, it can be useful to know when on break point, a player is going to serve out wide 69% of the time or something like that. But if you think about that too much, you get too robotic, too mechanical, and it's just going to hurt the way you play, and I'm really not that into it. And I buy it. I totally believe when Roger says that, because just look at the stuff he does. He knows the backhand on Berrettini is the weaker side because of the big data analytics. He might know which side to expect the serve to come on a break point down, something like that maybe. But is it really that groundbreaking? Is it cheating? Is it unfair? If you can pay some fancy guys to get more in-depth analysis of why most players are not as good on the backhand side and you should hit there, it's not that big of a deal. And look at some of the shots Federer hits. They're totally improv. There's no stats team that's going to tell you to go for some of the shots that Roger Federer goes for. So I totally believe him when he says that. Let's move on to the last thing today is the actual proof. I only have it on my phone, but I do have it. Oh, speaking of on my phone, put this up on the screen. I'm wearing this one because this is Uniqlo, and I'm still not feeling very well, so I need to stay warm. This is Uniqlo, And I saw Federer wear this maybe a year ago or at the Australian Open this year, and it had the Uniqlo thing on it. Look at this. I'm watching thinking, man, I got to get me one of those. I hope Uniqlo makes that available. Most of the stuff Federer wears you can't even buy if you want to. And Damien, got to get me one of those tops. Damien, me and him, we're like brethren from afar. We have very similar taste. That is one impressive man, Damien Byrne. Fan favorite of the show. We're fans. Here at Coffee Break Tennis, we're fans of some of you. Damien Byrne, he's definitely one of them. Oh, one more thing to show you from my phone that I forgot to put in the stack of stuff today. Look at Federer after the first serve. Berrettini gets right on the baseline after his first serve goes in. He's yellow. Federer's red. Way in there. But here is the money ball. Heavy Topspin is the name of this article from tennisabstract.com. Don't know the writer. Yup, Wimbledon is playing slower this year. Put it on the screen. The players are right. Wimbledon's surface or the balls or atmosphere or aura has slowed down in comparison with recent years. We've heard comments to that effect from Federer, Raonic, Becker, Nadal, and many others. Raonic says it's because of the grass changing. Nadal says it's the balls changing. Regardless of the reason, the numbers back it up. So if you look at 2018, you might be able to say, okay, that number spikes up because you got Isner and Anderson going deep and hitting tons of aces. That changes the total averages. But look, it's definitely down from 2017. It's way down from last year, whether that's because of bigger servers being there last year or not. The unreturned serves, meaning it wasn't an ace, but the court helped it out. This is something Federer gets a lot at Wimbledon, and something he's probably disappointed about not having as much of this year. If the court doesn't slow it down, you get more unreturned serves, even if you don't hit the perfect spot for an ace. 36% in 2017, a little up to 0.6, down all the way to 33.3 in 2019. That is a big drop. I mean, that's about a 10% drop, no matter which year you compare it to. And the rallies that are 3 or less, meaning serve, return, one ball, 3 or less, as in ace or unreturned serve or big serve with a missed spot, return winner, or serve plus 1 points. Those numbers are going down as well. 65.2 went slightly up in 2018, down 61, 61.9. Again, it's like an 8%, round that up to 10% drop. 10% is significant. In a game like tennis, a game of inches, a game of millimeters, a game of centimeters. Then he goes on to explain, I'm assuming it's a he at tennisabstract.com, why last year could have changed the numbers a little. So that's when they go into this number, and this is great. Put this on the screen. If you measure all courts, take the average of all courts throughout the year, that is represented by 1. A very slow court will tend to be something closer to 0.5. which is 50% less than 1. So 1 is your average number of aces at any tournament throughout the entire year. They took every tournament. And again, one thing they point out in this article is very smart because I am a tennis guy making this show. I try to gather a lot of stats. One thing I always notice is some tournaments, 500s, they give you more stats than 250s. Masters 1000s, you get even more stats that they don't bother measuring. I guess it's not cost effective at the smaller tournaments. But one thing that they have at all tournaments, because you don't always get the number of shots. I think it's only at the Masters, the less than 10 ball rallies, less than 5 ball rallies. I think it's only Masters and Majors where you can see that. And I don't even know how to see it at the Majors. It's really only the Masters. Aces you see every tournament. Doesn't matter. Even if you're a rec player, it's kind of easy to keep track of aces because you probably only hit like 2, right? So aces are at all courts. Now let's compare Wimbledon, 1 being the average of all tournaments, 1.5 being 50% more, meaning it's a fast court, 0.5 being 50% less than the average, meaning it's a slow court. Take a look. In 2011, it's 1.26, faster in 2012, faster in 2013, faster in 2014. That's the fastest number here, 1.35, meaning you got 35% more aces at Wimbledon in 2014 than you do on any other surface that year. 2015, 20% more. 2016, 6% more. 2017, 3% more. 2018, 14% more. And in 2019, compared to all the other surfaces, you're only seeing 4% more aces on grass at Wimbledon than anywhere else. I don't think you need anything more than that. That is pretty definitive. And one thing we saw in 2017, it was pretty slow, but it was slippery, slick, and low. And Federer did a very good job using those low balls to his advantage, using the slice. People complain when Federer slices too much. I remember they did it in 2017, and I said, don't do that. He's doing it on purpose here at Wimbledon. It's not because he's nervous about backhands. Now, I know his one-hand topspin backhand hasn't looked as good throughout the tournament. I think it was pretty good against Berrettini today, but we still saw some get dumped in the net. Maybe part of that is because Federer's realizing the slice is so low here, he's got to really tune up the slice and focus a lot on that. I believe the number is 50-50. Federer is hitting half topspin, half slice on the backhand right now. You better believe that's on purpose because it's all about, for the big three, the end, when they face each other, the end of the tournament. And Federer knows that slice backhand and using the lowness of this court is going to be a key if he's going to beat Djokovic, Nadal. Same with going to the net, which we saw a lot of today. Hit the music. We're going to get out of here. Thank you for watching Coffee Break Tennis. It's good to be back. If you are one of the patron saints of Coffee Break Tennis, you will get a bonus show tomorrow. No one else will. We usually don't cover women's tennis because I spend so much time working on men's tennis game and I have my other jobs that I go to. But tomorrow, there's only women's matches on TV. So, for the patron saints of Coffee Break Tennis, if you're not one of them, you can be one. Go to patreon.com/Coffee Break Tennis. Help the show grow. Help me quit my other jobs and do this full time. And if you do so, or if you have already done so, we thank you very much for being a patron saint. You will get a bonus podcast tomorrow where we break down all the women's stuff. It'll be the first time I do a show exclusively only about women's tennis. So you might want to not miss that. We'll be back on Wednesday with a regular show. If something crazy happens tomorrow, maybe we'll do an emergency podcast for everyone. But the odds are only the patron saints get a show tomorrow. See ya!